That Christmas morning felt colder than any winter I'd lived through in 63 years. Savannah didn't change seasons, but something inside my home did. And within a few hours, the people I called family would become strangers. And I would be forced out of the house I built with 30 years of blood, bone, and badge. I was pouring my first cup of coffee when Ethan walked into the kitchen. My son. The boy I once carried on my shoulders through every downtown Christmas parade. He placed a red gift box on the table, but his eyes held the kind of dread a man has when he's about to deliver a sentence no father should ever hear. "Dad." His voice shook, not from cold, from guilt. "Madison thinks it's time for you to move out. She says the house needs a new chapter. Move out. A new chapter." The words hit the kitchen floor like a shovel striking fresh dirt. Before I could respond, I heard her footsteps. Madison. Curled hair, white silk robe, eyes sharp as winter steel. She didn't call me Dad. She never had. "Mr. Whitfield," she said, her voice polished like a blade. "We need space. And at your age, you should be somewhere with proper care. This house isn't suitable for someone like you. Someone like me." I'd taken bullets on duty and stayed standing, but those 3 words cut deeper than anything a criminal ever threw at me. I clenched my fist beneath the table, not out of weakness, but because the fury building in my chest could have shaken the walls if I let it loose. They didn't know. They couldn't know that in just minutes Madison would go snooping through my room, rip open drawers, and find the lottery ticket I bought the night before. The ticket worth $85 million. They didn't know she would scream that it belonged to them. Didn't know she would ignore the name printed clearly on the back, my name. They didn't know they would drag my clothes outside, throw them into the yard like garbage as if I were an old dog someone forgot to bury. On my own lawn. On Christmas morning. While church bells rang hope for the rest of Savannah, my home turned into the battleground where my hope died. My name is Gordon Whitfield, 63. Retired cop. Widower. A man who gave everything to protect others only to be betrayed by the 2 people I protected most. And that was the day I learned betrayal doesn't always come from shadows. Sometimes it comes from the same table where you've served dinner for 20 years. Before I tell you how I took everything back and what justice really looks like, I know you're listening from somewhere. Your car, your kitchen, a dark bedroom you're trying to fall asleep in. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. And if this story already has its hooks in you, hit like, share, and subscribe. Because trust me, it gets darker from here. Much darker. And then you'll understand why that Christmas morning wasn't the day I lost everything. It was the day I was reborn. 6:00 a.m. December 25th, 2024. Savannah was covered in a thin winter mist, cold enough that every breath came out like smoke. I stood alone in the kitchen, yellow light falling across the old wooden counters I replaced with my own hands back in 1998. The smell of fresh coffee was the only warmth left in that house. I set the mug down, opened the drawer, and took out the lottery ticket I bought the night before and the receipt. The same numbers I'd played for 20 years. Lydia's birthday. Our anniversary. The year I earned my first Medal of Valor. All the milestones of a life only I remembered now held in a handful of tiny printed numbers. I signed the back, placed it on the kitchen table beside the receipt. A habit. A ritual. Just like Lydia used to remind me. Always sign it right away, Gordon. Luck doesn't wait for slow people. I smiled at the memory, put on my jacket, and stepped outside. The porch was covered in cold dew. I bent down and brushed away a few wet leaves like I did every morning. And then I felt it, a presence. A glance from somewhere. I looked over to the right. Penelope's security camera, the one she installed after someone stole her Amazon package, blinked its little red light. I didn't know then that this small camera would capture the moment that changed everything. I stepped back inside. Silence. The kind of silence you hear at funerals. Ethan and Madison were still asleep from last night's party, a party I wasn't invited to, even though it happened in my own home. I sat at the dining table, took a breath, and lifted my coffee. A normal Christmas morning. If only the next few minutes hadn't changed the rest of my life. From the staircase I heard footsteps. Soft, slow, cold. Madison appeared in a silver nightgown, staring at me with that familiar blend of annoyance and disgust. "You're up early," she said, her voice flat and sharp. Not a greeting. Just a reminder that my presence inconvenienced her. She walked toward the kitchen. I watched her eyes scan the room, and then lock onto something. The ticket. She froze. A beat. Then stepped closer, leaning down as if looking at something that already belonged to her. And in one quick, subtle motion so fast most people would miss it, she lifted her phone and snapped a picture. Just one soft click. But it sounded like a blade being drawn. She glanced toward the stairs, checking if Ethan was awake, then back at the ticket. Her eyes narrowed. Greed shining like metal catching light. I said nothing. I never imagined that tiny moment would be the spark that burned my entire life down. Madison suddenly stiffened. Her gaze shot to the TV in the living room. The Powerball Christmas drawing was on screen. She looked at the TV, then the ticket, then the TV again. Her breathing hitched. 1 second, 2, then a scream ripped through the entire house. "We won $85 million. I jolted, dropping my coffee. The mug shattered across the floor, pieces scattering like the last bits of peace I had left. Ethan ran down the stairs. Madison clutched the ticket like it had always belonged to her. I stood frozen in the kitchen, not understanding, not believing, not recognizing the people laughing in front of me. I didn't know. My whole life was about to be thrown out the same way the broken mug lay at my feet. I was still standing there in the cold kitchen of the house I once believed would be my home until the end of my life, when Madison's scream exploded like lightning straight into my chest. We won $85 million. It wasn't joy, it wasn't relief. It was the sound of someone who believed she had finally found a way out of her own life by swallowing someone else's. It took me a few seconds to realize the air in the house had changed. No more warmth of coffee. No soft Christmas lights Lydia used to hang along the walls every winter. Just chaos, footsteps pounding doors, slamming, Madison's voice blasting like a speaker turned all the way up. "Ethan, get up now. Move." She pounded on the bedroom door over and over. Ethan stumbled out, hair sticking up like a kid dragged out of homeroom. "What? What's going on? What's going on?" Madison shrieked. "We're rich. I told you the universe finally gave us a chance." She yanked his arm so hard he nearly tripped down the stairs. I watched them from across the room, with a confusion so sharp it felt like pain I hadn't learned how to name yet. Just 1 minute ago, it was still Christmas morning. Now, it felt like the morning someone was preparing to detonate my entire world. Madison held up the ticket, breathing hard, eyes wild. "Ethan, look. Look. We actually won. This is it. This is our escape. Our new life." Ethan stared at the ticket, eyes widening. I recognized that look, the look of someone seeing a dream they never let themselves hope for. His gaze flicked to me for a brief, tiny moment, then slid right back to Madison as if pulled by her ambition. "Oh my God." "Are you sure?" he whispered. Madison waved him off as if he'd asked something stupid. "Sure. Look at the numbers. Look at the TV. Everything matches. This is the ticket. This is ours." She put weight on those 2 words. Ours, like they were carved out of bone. Not once did she say his. I stepped forward and said quietly, "Let me see the ticket." Madison spun around, eyes cold enough to cut. "You let me hold it. For safety. What if you lose it?" I froze. Not because of the words, but because of the tone. She didn't speak to me like family. She spoke to me like a liability. Madison wasn't finished. She spun around the living room like a performer taking a stage. And I watched helpless as she used the same room Lydia and I once decorated for Christmas movies. The same room where Ethan used to hang his little red pajamas on the fireplace as the backdrop for her victory. She lifted her phone, flipped her hair, and angled the camera just right so Lydia's old wooden cabinet appeared behind her. "Good morning, everyone. I have the biggest news of my life." Ethan stood beside her, smiling in shock. I stood just outside the frame, the man who raised this family, now a shadow in his own home. We are officially a millionaire family. $85 million. I felt like someone had just told a cruel joke. This house, this family, and Madison was live streaming in my living room like it all belonged to her. Every word she said cut deeper. "We're getting out of this rundown place." Rundown. She turned the camera across the room. The walls I painted, the floors. I nailed down the furniture Lydia cared for her whole life and called it rundown. I never imagined someone could stand in my home and use that word, as if everything I built was worthless. When the live stream ended, Madison lowered her phone, exhaled sharply, and turned to Ethan. "We're moving as soon as possible. Atlanta. Or maybe Florida. We can sell this house. Or leave it. I don't care." Then she said the words that froze my blood. "And your father needs to consider assisted living. They have staff. He'll be fine." Ethan's face cracked. He looked at me, then at his wife. He was pulled between guilt and fear of her reaction. "Madison, assisted living is a little... What?" she snapped. "He's 63, unemployed, and home all day. We can't have him sitting in the garage in the new place. We need to find him somewhere." Somewhere. In her mouth, I wasn't a father. Not family. Not the man who raised her husband. I was something to be relocated. An item to store. Ethan lowered his eyes. I saw shame flicker in him, but not enough to make him speak up for me. I walked back into the kitchen, my heart heavy. The coffee was still warm. The morning light still fell across the old wooden countertop Lydia used to oil every autumn. I remembered placing the ticket here, and the receipt, the proof I bought it, right beside it. I looked down. The ticket was still there. But the receipt was gone. My chest tightened. I lifted the tablecloth, checked under plates, looked beneath the counter, opened drawers that had no reason to contain a receipt. Nothing. A cold realization crawled down my spine, not because the receipt was missing, but because I knew exactly who had been near the table. I straightened up. And there she was, Madison, leaning against the refrigerator, arms crossed, watching me search like I was a child looking for a lost candy wrapper. She spoke slowly, deliberately. "You sure you signed it?" I looked straight into her eyes. I knew what she was doing. I knew what she wanted. She didn't just want the ticket. She wanted the narrative, control, power over the story, the house, the money, the people, even the memories. Her question wasn't a question. It was a warning. If I say you didn't sign it, then you didn't sign it. Ethan stood behind her silent. No defense. No dad signed it already. Just quiet. The quiet of someone who had chosen a side. And in that tiny, fragile moment, I watched what used to be my family collapse in on itself like an old wooden house hammered by a storm. No sound. Just falling. Right there on Christmas morning, with lights blinking on the porch and distant church bells ringing hope across Savannah. I knew the real war had begun. Not a war over $85 million. Not even a war over a lottery ticket. But a war to protect my dignity, my name, my truth. And Madison had no idea. She had just made the biggest mistake of her life. People like to say tragedy arrives all at once, that it hits in a single moment. But that's not true. Real tragedy comes from tiny cracks, hairline fractures you ignore until the whole wall collapses in front of you. Christmas of 2024 was only the day I finally saw the wall fall. The bricks had been loosening for 7 years. Fall of 2017. I still remember the afternoon Ethan drove up to my house, eyes red, shoulders slumped like he was carrying a lifetime of failure on his back. "Dad, I lost my job." It stunned me. Not because he lost a job, everyone stumbles, but because of how he said it, like a child apologizing for breaking the family's only bowl. I opened the door wider. "Stay here, for as long as you need." At that time, Ethan and Madison had only been married for 2 years. Madison said she was taking a break from her influencer career to find her direction. To be honest, I didn't even know what an influencer was. I just knew my son needed a place to breathe. So I let them stay in the living room. Then I moved them into the guest room. I didn't know. I had just opened the door to the person who would throw me out of my own life 7 years later. At first things were fine. Madison was polite, smiled a lot, talked sweetly. But within weeks, the little rules began. The first one came in the kitchen. She stood there holding a paring knife, looking at my cabinets like they were filth. "Mr. Whitfield, your kitchen cabinets are a bit outdated. I'll call someone to replace them. It'll look cleaner." I blinked, but I built those with my own hands. Lydia and Madison had already turned away. The cabinets were replaced by glossy white ones, cold as a surgical room. The last trace of the work Lydia and I did together, gone in one afternoon. Next came the food arrangement. I opened the pantry the next morning for my oatmeal. Gone. Replaced by protein powders, organic snacks, jars with labels I didn't recognize. I asked Ethan. He scratched his head. "Madison said your stuff should go on the bottom shelf so we can reach things easier." I bent down to the lowest shelf, practically on the floor. My canned soup. My oatmeal shoved into a wrinkled plastic bag. My food pushed downward like it was something shameful. I said nothing. Years as a cop taught me this. In time, people reveal who they are without you saying a word. Then came the rule about Lydia's cooking. One rainy evening in March 2018, I was making the chicken soup Lydia loved. The smell of onions, pepper, warm broth, it softened something in me every time. Madison walked in, pinching her nose like I had set a cat on fire. "What are you doing? This smell is awful. The neighbors will think something's wrong with this house." I set the spoon down. This was Lydia's favorite soup. "Lydia's gone, and I'm sensitive to smells. Please stop cooking this." The way she said Lydia's name, flat, cold, dismissive, hit harder than anything else. That night I poured the soup down the sink. Slowly the rules became routine cruelty. One winter morning I got home from my volunteer shift at the fire station. I typed the garage code. Red light. Door didn't open. Tried again. Red light. I rang the bell. Madison opened the door, arms folded. "Oh, right. I forgot to tell you. I changed the garage code. For safety." "Safety for who?" "For the kids. You know, you're not as quick as you used to be." The last sentence she delivered slowly, intentionally, sharply. That night I stared at myself in the mirror. Yes, I was older. My hair was white, my skin was wrinkled. But I still ran 3 miles every morning. Still carried rescue ladders. Still lifted Avery when she ran into my arms. Yet in Madison's eyes, I was already the burden. Then the neighbors. One afternoon in 2020, Penelope walked over with a bag of apples. "Mr. Gordon, Madison told me you've been forgetful." "I'm worried." I froze. "I'm perfectly fine, Penelope." She looked torn. "She said you left the stove on, that you're mixing up days." I looked toward my house, Madison standing on the porch, arms crossed, watching me like someone studying livestock. I understood. She was crafting a narrative, laying the groundwork. If I was forgetful, confused, slipping, it would be easier to remove me later. I stayed quiet. There's no point arguing with people who treat lies like tools. Another day in 2021, I received a notice from the HOA about trash placed outside my home. Penelope pulled up her camera footage to show me Madison was the one dropping bags of trash at my doorstep. I asked Ethan. He said softly, "It's probably a misunderstanding, Dad." He didn't want to face the truth, or couldn't, or both. But the moment that truly tore something inside me came on Christmas 2023. Avery, my sweet granddaughter, 5 years old, made a Christmas card for me with her tiny hands, colored paper, a drawing of me in a Santa hat. "Grandpa, I made this for you." I bent down, hugged her. Her smile warmed every cold spot inside me. But then Madison stepped out from behind her. She grabbed the card, glanced at it for 1 second, and tore it in half. "Mess. Don't clutter the house." Avery stepped back. Her lip trembled. She looked at me like she'd done something wrong. My heart didn't break. It shredded. "Mom said we don't need it," she whispered. I knelt, took her tiny hand. "With Grandpa, everything you make is needed." Madison shot me a look so cold it could freeze metal. For years, every small rule, every quiet insult, every stolen inch of dignity was like a drop of water hitting the same spot on stone. Not strong enough to break it, but steady enough to crack it. And on Christmas morning 2024, I was simply watching the result of 7 years of erosion. People say betrayal comes suddenly. They're wrong. Betrayal comes from signs we ignore because we want to believe something better. I wanted to believe Ethan would stand up for me. I wanted to believe Madison was just a little difficult. I wanted to believe family couldn't be taken away. But when Madison tore that Christmas card, the first one Avery ever made for me, I saw the future. A future where she controlled the narrative, where her word outweighed truth, where I stood on the sidelines of my own life. I didn't know then that 1 year later she wouldn't just tear a Christmas card. She would tear my entire life into pieces. There are days when no one needs to tell you. You don't belong here anymore. Their eyes say it for them. December 27th. Just 2 days after that cursed Christmas was the day I understood Madison didn't just want the lottery ticket. She wanted to erase me from my own life. That morning I heard the rumble of a large truck pulling up to the house, the beeping as it backed in, the slam of the cargo door, the heavy boots crunching over the thin layer of winter frost. I stepped out onto the porch. A white truck sat in my driveway, bold letters on the side: Savannah Luxury Living, Delivery and Installation. 3 workers were hauling out cream-colored sofas, marble tables, boxes labeled Master Suite Set. I asked quietly, "You sure you're at the right address?" One man checked his clipboard. "No mistake, sir. The new homeowner requested installation today." The new homeowner. In the house I paid off every month for decades. The house where Lydia died in my arms. The house I returned to after every night shift for 30 years as a cop. My blood went cold, metal cold. Before I could say anything else, Madison appeared behind me wearing a beige sweater neatly curled, hair red, lipstick sharp as dried wine. "Move those pieces upstairs," she said, waving her hand. "The whole place is getting a reset." One of the workers asked, "And the old furniture, ma'am?" Madison glanced at me, chin-tilted, eyes gleaming like a cat that just claimed a territory. "Take it to the garage, or straight to the curb. The former owner won't need it." Former owner. That was me. Ethan hurried down the stairs behind her, his voice barely strong enough to stir dust. "Madison, don't make a big deal out of this." "Make a big deal?" she snapped. "That lottery ticket is ours. How long do you want this old man running the house?" Her voice was so loud the entire neighborhood could hear. I saw Penelope's curtains shift. She was watching. Everyone was watching. I inhaled slowly, held myself together, what was left of myself. But what Madison did next pushed everything beyond what a man should ever have to bear. She strutted toward the middle of the yard, one hand on her hips, sighing like a martyr carrying the weight of a whole family. "Ladies and gentlemen," she shouted toward the neighbors, "if you see Mr. Gordon wandering around or leaving trash outside, please forgive him. He can't take care of himself anymore." I felt the world tilt sideways. She wasn't insulting me. She was building a file against me. A narrative. A precedent to claim I was incompetent and seize everything. Before I could even breathe, a silver government SUV pulled up. The logo on the door, Adult Protective Services, APS. My stomach dropped. A woman stepped out, 40s, firm eyes, neutral expression. Mr. Gordon Whitfield. We received a report about potential memory loss and self-neglect. Madison pressed a dramatic hand to her chest as if she were on stage. Oh, thank God, I was so worried. The APS worker raised a hand. I'll speak with him privately. I led her inside. It took her less than 2 minutes to see the truth. Madison was directing furniture like she owned a penthouse. I was steady, clear, calm. She asked, "Do you know today's date?" I gave her the exact date, month, year, listed 3 current news events, and recited the patrol car number from my final shift on the force. She asked, "Do you take your medications properly?" I pulled the correct bottle from the cabinet, named the drug purpose and dosage. She asked, "Can you prepare meals on your own?" I gestured at the kitchen, clean, organized knives aligned the way I taught rookies to keep a mess hall. By the end, she folded her file shut. And in a voice low enough for only me, yet loud enough for Madison to see the truth in my face, she said, "I see no signs of cognitive decline or self-neglect. This report appears exaggerated." Madison froze like someone slapped her in public. Ethan swallowed hard and looked away. The worker left. Madison stood still, fists so tight her nails marked her palms. Then she whispered, cold as winter steel, "Fine. If you want to fight, I don't lose." I looked right into her eyes. "I'm not fighting anyone. I'm just living in my own home." She smirked. Not for long. But the final blow came later that afternoon. The last sunbeam dipped behind the roofline as I sorted through old photos of Lydia, her handwriting still soft on the back of each picture. Then I heard metal hit metal. Clang. I turned. Madison stood by the big outdoor trash bin. In her hand, my police medal. The one I earned after rescuing a child in 1998. The one I kept in Lydia's wooden keepsake box. Her smile was the smile of someone who knows exactly where to stab. "You don't need this anymore. Millionaire homes don't display rusty junk." I froze. Then she opened her fingers. The metal dropped, hit the bottom of the bin. The sound was deep, cold, like a coffin lid shutting. I don't remember how I got down the steps. I only remember the feeling, my heart being crushed from the inside. I picked up the metal. My hands trembled. But I didn't cry. Cops don't cry in front of the person trying to break them. I just looked at Madison with a silence sharp enough to make her step back. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. Ethan stepped into the doorway, staring at the scene like a man watching the consequences of his own cowardice walk right up to him. "Madison, what are you doing?" She kept her chin raised. "I'm clearing out the past. Otherwise, how do you expect him to leave?" Ethan said nothing. He just stood there, small, weak, and ashamed. That night I sat in the old garage under the dim yellow light and polished the metal until every trace of Madison's fingerprints disappeared. And I realized, people can take your furniture, your room, your voice inside your own home, but they can't take your memories, or your honor, or the years you've spent standing between danger and the innocent. Lydia once told me, when people push you to your limit, Gordon, that's when you find out what's left. That day I found out. I still had my dignity. I still had the calm of a man who had faced death. I still had silence, the one thing people like Madison always underestimate, until it's the thing they fear most. And I knew one thing for certain: the glass had overflowed. All that was left now was the rising tide. There are mornings when the air itself warns you a storm is coming. Not a storm outside, a storm inside your own home. December 29th, 2024. I woke to the sound of something heavy hitting the front yard metal. Clanging wood, splitting clothes, landing in the snow like trash being dumped. I opened the second-floor window, and I saw a sight no cop, no matter how hardened, ever forgets. Madison was throwing my belongings into the yard. My coats, my old badge wallet, Lydia's wooden keepsake box. Even the chair I used to sit in every afternoon to read. She wasn't just tossing objects. She was throwing pieces of my life. And with every throw, she screamed shrill, sharp, loud enough for the whole neighborhood. "Come get your stuff, Gordon. We're done doing charity for you." Charity? The house I paid every mortgage bill on. The house I repaired with my own hands. The house where Lydia took her last breath. Now she called it charity. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, long enough for my knees to tighten, not because I was weak, but because I had to hold back the rage rising in me like a tide. I stepped outside. The snow was thin on the grass, cold biting through the soles of my boots. Madison stood in the middle of the mess, hands on her hips, panting like she'd just finished a CrossFit session. Ethan stayed at the door, one hand on the doorknob, eyes glued to the tile floor, not to me. Cowardice hurts in ways knives don't. Madison picked up Lydia's wooden box and slammed it onto the ground. The lid flew open. A photo rolled out and landed face down in the snow. The corner snapped off. I bent down slowly, very slowly, because I knew if I moved any faster, I'd break something that shouldn't be broken. Before I even stood up, Madison shrieked, "Listen carefully. This house is ours. You have no right here. Ethan and I are done supporting a useless old man." I looked at her, said nothing, just looked. In my line of work, silence can be scarier than shouting. She flinched just for a second, then covered it with a smug smile. "Don't stare at me like that. You're old. A nursing home is where you belong. People like you only drag others down. People like you." Those words cut deeper than any blade I ever faced on duty. Ethan stayed frozen behind her lips, trembling as if he wanted to say something, but fear pulled the words back into his throat. I asked quietly, "Ethan, you really agree with this?" He didn't lift his eyes. I just don't want conflict, Dad." Conflict. Not truth, not respect, not right or wrong, just avoiding conflict. I straightened up, brushed the snow from my coat, and steadied my voice, the same voice I used in interrogation rooms for decades. "Madison." She folded her arms, chin raised like someone who believed she'd already won. I asked, slow, sharp, deliberate, "Did you read the name on the back of the lottery ticket?" The world seemed to stop for a beat. The wind paused. Even the birds went silent. Ethan looked up. Madison froze 1 second. 2, 3. Her chin lowered slightly. Her eyes hardened. She knew exactly which ticket I meant. The one she had claimed as ours on Christmas morning. The one she didn't expect me to know she had taken. She narrowed her eyes. "I don't know what you're rambling about. I don't care about any ticket of yours." Her voice quivered just enough to betray the lie. She turned to Ethan. "Don't listen to him, he's confused." But Ethan stayed silent, no longer sure, no longer blindly following her. Madison saw the hesitation and immediately switched into her favorite tactic, misdirection. She whipped out her phone, opened TikTok, and hit go live right in front of me. "Hi everyone. Today is moving day. We're helping my father-in-law move out so he can have a more appropriate living environment." Her voice was sugar. Her eyes were knives. Behind her, the live stream showed my belongings scattered across the snow, a lifetime dumped like junk. Comments started rolling in. "Poor old man. Why does he look so lost? That house looks expensive." "Whose is it?" Madison laughed lightly. "He needs the kind of care we can't provide. We're millionaires now. Life is changing." She angled the camera to capture me as if I were a prop in her performance. The burdensome old man she was graciously helping. What she didn't know was this. Among the viewers was someone watching without commenting, without following, without typing a single word. just silently pressing record. That video would later become a key piece of evidence in court. Madison stepped up to me, shoved my chest with her palm. "Leave. Today. I don't want to see you walk through this door ever again." The wind sliced across my face. I stared into her eyes, not like a man looking at an enemy, but like a man looking at someone who forgot she too would grow old someday. I picked up my bag. Ethan stepped down the stairs, voice small. "Dad, let me help." I raised my hand. "No." I looked at the two of them standing in the doorway that used to be my home now, nothing but a cheap stage for her to perform on. "I'll go." Madison smirked like she'd conquered something. But before crossing the gate, I turned back, looked Madison straight in the eye, cold, steady, unshaken. "I'm not done." She scoffed. "You have nothing." I tilted my head slightly, my gaze landing exactly where her greed lived. "No, you're wrong." I placed a hand on my coat pocket where the lottery receipt and the signed photocopy rested safely. "I have the one thing you can't fake, my signature." Madison froze, just for a flicker, but it was enough. As I walked away, she screamed behind me, "No one will believe you. You're nothing in this house." I didn't turn back. I just gave her the only answer she deserved, a quiet sentence that hit harder than any shout. "That's not your house." And I stepped through the gate. For the last time. I didn't know it then. But the next time I returned, I wouldn't be knocking. I'd be taking back everything they tried to steal. There are days when you lose everything. Then a few days later, you realize losing everything might not be the end after all. The first night after Madison threw me out, I didn't know where to go. Hotels were packed and overpriced for the holidays. The police support center for retired officers was closed for Christmas break. So I drove aimlessly through the dark until a faded neon sign appeared on the side of the road. "Magnolia Blooms, the old flower shop." Evelyn, the owner, 70 years old, widowed, looked at me just once, and she understood. "Gordon, you need a place to sleep." I nodded. No questions, no pity, no judgment. And somehow, that was the only thing keeping me standing. The room she gave me was upstairs, a tiny space that had once belonged to her daughter before she passed. Low ceilings, old walls, a single window facing a damp, empty street, a creaking bed, the faint smell of dried lavender mixed with dust, the scent of time settling onto forgotten things. It wasn't home, but it was the first place in a long time where no one yelled at me, no one told me I didn't belong, no one tried to erase me. I set my bag on the floor and looked around. Nothing in that room had anything to do with my life. There wasn't a single wall that held a memory of Lydia. Not one photo. Not one piece of my past. A 63-year-old man, a retired cop, a man who once cleaned violence off the streets, now reduced to fitting his entire world inside a room half the size of his old garage. I sat on the bed. My shoulders felt heavier than my own body. The sadness didn't kill me. It just made me miss Lydia more. She used to say, when they push you out of the place you belonged, it's not because you're weak. It's because they're scared of you. I didn't know if Madison feared me, but I knew this. She feared the truth, and the truth always finds a way back. That night my phone buzzed nonstop. Not from Ethan, not from Avery, not even a message of apology. It was email from the Savannah Police Department. Subject line, "Concern about former officer Gordon Whitfield." Concern. I opened it, and every sentence hit like ice water poured down my spine. "We received a report from one of Mr. Whitfield's relatives stating he has episodes of instability, forgetfulness, failure to take medication, and potential risk to others." Word for word exactly how Madison writes. I tightened my grip on the phone, but I didn't throw it, didn't curse, didn't break. I've stared down men with weapons. I wasn't about to get rattled by an email. I just let out one long breath, the kind that feels like it might crack a rib. Madison had entered Phase 2 legal defamation. If anyone believed I was incompetent, the $85 million ticket could be frozen, held until a legal guardian took control. That guardian would be Ethan, and Madison would be the puppeteer behind him. I sat at the small wooden desk, turned on the yellow lamp, and replied, "I am fully competent. These accusations are false. I am willing to undergo any medical or psychological evaluation." Send. Silence. No response. I turned off the light. Couldn't sleep. Cars passed on the street below, echoing like footsteps of a past trying to catch me. Then on January 2nd, 2025, only a few days after my world collapsed, my phone rang. Unknown number, Atlanta area code. "This is Gordon." The voice on the other end was steady, deep, precise, like a man reading truth from a script. "Good afternoon, Mr. Whitfield. My name is Grant Carter, verification attorney for the Georgia Lottery Commission. I need to confirm some information." I sat upright. My heart didn't race, it just beat heavier. "Is this about the ticket?" "Yes," he said. "We need to confirm the identity of the person who signed the back." I answered, "My name. I signed at 6 a.m. on December 25. Grant slowed his speech, a sign I'd heard 1,000 times from professionals who were about to deliver something serious. "Do you still have the purchase receipt?" "I do. Original and copy. The convenience store where you bought the ticket sent us footage. We saw you enter at 5:37 a.m. Is that correct?" "That's correct." "Good." Paper rustled on his end. Then came the line that froze my spine, "Mr. Whitfield, we received an email from a third party claiming you are not mentally competent to possess the prize." I didn't need a name. I knew. Grant continued. "The email states you are confused, unable to manage your behavior, and a danger to yourself, and that a legal guardian should take over the winnings." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Let me guess." "Madison." I cannot disclose that, he replied, classic lawyer tone. "But what I can tell you is this. Our records show you are fully competent based on prior evaluations from Adult Protective Services." I closed my eyes. APS. The visit Madison tried to weaponize against me. Turns out she'd stabbed herself in the foot. Grant spoke again. "But we need complete cooperation from you. The ticket has your name, but family disputes trigger automatic scrutiny." I asked, "What do you need from me?" "Original receipt, store footage, signature verification, identification, and..." He paused before continuing, "Any evidence proving the incompetency claim is fabricated." A spark lit in my mind. Madison's live stream. Her humiliation. The video the anonymous viewer recorded. A golden bullet. I said, "I have something." Grant replied, "Then you have a very strong chance to solidify rightful ownership." For the first time in weeks, my chest felt lighter. Not much, but enough to breathe. Grant ended the call with, "I'll contact you soon. And Mr. Whitfield, do not sign anything anyone gives you. Not a single document." "Understood." I nodded. Understood. Even though he couldn't see it, he knew I meant it. After the call, I sat down. My heart felt torn between relief and grief. Relief because someone finally believed me. Grief because that someone was a stranger, not my own son. I opened the wooden box I carried out of the house the day Madison threw me out. Inside were my police medal, my Savannah PD badge, and a family photo from 1999, me, Lydia, and 8-year-old Ethan smiling in front of our old Christmas tree. I touched the photo. My hand shook just slightly. Lydia's face, that soft smile, gentle eyes, the kind of woman who never let cruelty win. And I could almost hear her voice, "Gordon, get back up. You're not done. This isn't over." I wrapped the medal in cloth, placed the photo in my wallet, closed the box. Then I sat up straight, staring at the empty wall ahead. On December 29th, I was thrown out like garbage. On January 2nd, the scales finally began to shift. Madison had started the war. But me? I was going to finish it. And I made a silent promise to Lydia and to the man I used to be the day I returned to that house. I wouldn't be asking to come inside. I'd be taking back everything they tried to steal. If you ever want to know someone's true character, don't watch them when they're broke. Watch them the second they think they've struck gold. After Christmas 2024, Madison transformed not gradually but violently. Like a wolf that had finally gotten the scent of blood. Greed lit up her eyes. Power tightened her posture. And every word she spoke carried the certainty of someone who believed the world now belonged to her. She thought she was climbing her way to a new life. She didn't realize she was tightening the noose around her own neck. I was sitting in the tiny room above the flower shop, a room so small that when I stretched my legs, my boots nearly touched the opposite wall. The single lamp cast a soft yellow glow. Dust floated like tiny ghosts. The old kettle Evelyn loaned me hissed quietly, filling the room with the smell of burnt coffee grounds. For the first time in days, I felt a moment of stillness. Then an email notification chimed. A legal document. Subject: petition for removal of financial authority. Gordon Whitfield. My eyebrows didn't even rise. At this point, nothing Madison did could surprise me. But when I opened the file, I actually let out a low, breathy laugh. Not humor. A cold, tired laugh, the kind a man makes when he sees just how stupid his enemy truly is. The attorney representing Madison. Not a reputable Atlanta law firm. Not an estate planning expert. Not even someone who handled family disputes. It was a tiny hole-in-the-wall office downtown, the kind of lawyer who handles tenant fights, overdue rent, and petty squabbles between neighbors. The kind of lawyer people hire when they want something dirty done cheap. The document described me as disoriented, forgetful, unable to manage bills, a danger to myself. I sipped my weak coffee unfazed. Madison thought she could strip a retired police officer of his legal competence with a couple of lies typed in Times New Roman. She truly had no idea who she was dealing with. Then came the nursing home stunt. Late that afternoon, Evelyn brought up an envelope. She didn't say a word, just handed it to me gently, like she was afraid the paper itself might hurt. Return address: Savannah Pines Assisted Living. I opened it and read, "Admission request denied. We require applicant's consent before placement." I blinked. I hadn't requested admission anywhere. I called them immediately. "Hi, this is Gordon Whitfield. I never applied to your facility." The woman sighed, the kind of sigh that carries exhaustion from years of dealing with messy families. "Mr. Whitfield, the paperwork was submitted by someone claiming to be your guardian, but since you didn't sign, we rejected it. We've informed the applicant." Mrs. Madison. Guardian. Not legal guardian. Self-proclaimed guardian. That's fraudulent, punishable by law. I thanked the woman. Hung up. Another note in Madison's growing file of self-incrimination. And then came her financial meltdown. Penelope texted me a screenshot from a Tesla employee, Madison Whitfield Group LLC, deposit pending. Need proof of funds. She had created an LLC just to buy a Tesla Model X with money she didn't have, and a future she was desperate to fake. She wanted the world to see her as someone reborn into luxury, but Tesla wanted something far more inconvenient: actual money. Madison spiraled. She spammed emails to Tesla, to her bargain bin lawyer, to HOA, even to random contacts complaining about unfair treatment, and when reality didn't bend to her delusions, she turned her attention back to the easiest target, me. Meanwhile, Ethan was deteriorating. Penelope saw him outside one night, sitting on the porch steps, hands shaking so hard he couldn't light his cigarette. The next morning she caught sight of him again, eyes bloodshot, dark circles heavy as bruises, a prescription bottle of anti-anxiety meds clutched in his fist. Ethan wasn't evil. He was a weak man being steered by someone stronger, louder, and infinitely more ruthless. Madison bent him until he cracked, and she didn't care. To her, Ethan was just a middleman between her and the $85 million. And then the moment this chapter pivots, the moment that changed everything. Penelope knocked softly on my door. When I opened it, she held out her phone, face pale. "Gordon, you need to see this." She handed me the video. Her porch camera had recorded it perfectly. Madison standing under the porch light with a wine glass in her hand, talking to a friend, like she was discussing weekend plans, not a human life. Her voice floated through the speaker. "I swear when the old man dies, the house is ours." I didn't speak, didn't blink. I watched it again, and again. Every word was deceptively soft, but sharp enough to cut bone. I finally looked up. Penelope's eyes were filled with apology and anger. "I'm sorry, Gordon, but you need to know how far she's willing to go." I nodded slowly. I'd heard criminals talk like that. Never thought I'd hear it from inside my own family. But instead of breaking me, it grounded me, solidified me, hardened me in a way nothing else had. I thanked Penelope, closed the door, sat at the cramped wooden desk, and I saved the video into a new folder on my laptop, Madison Evidence. Inside it, I added her live stream, kicking me out her defamatory email to the police, the APS report clearing me the nursing home attempt, the lottery receipt, the convenience store footage, the signed ticket, piece by piece. Madison had handed me the tools to destroy her credibility. I only had to collect them. I didn't start this war, but I knew how to finish one. She escalated. She lied. She smeared my name. She pushed me to the edge. But the thing Madison never understood was, when a man is already standing at the cliff, you don't scare him by shoving. Sometimes he shoves back. And the video Penelope brought me, that was the moment Madison officially placed her head in the trap she built. I looked out through the tiny window. Cold wind swept past the dried lavender Evelyn hung outside. A chill rolled across my neck, not from fear, from clarity, from purpose. For the first time since Christmas morning, the air around me felt still. And in that stillness, I understood one truth. The game had changed, and not in her favor. There are conversations no father ever wants to have with his son. Not because they hurt, but because you're terrified the truth you hear will change the way your heart beats forever. That morning I texted Ethan 4 cold clipped words. Come, tell the truth. No softness, no excuses, no room to hide behind Madison's voice. I needed to know down to the bone which side my son stood on. Ethan arrived close to noon. He stood in the doorway of my tiny rented room above the flower shop, hands shoved deep in his hoodie pockets, eyes bloodshot, shoulders sagging like a man who hadn't slept properly in weeks. When he stepped inside, he looked around. The creaky bed, the old wooden dresser, the battered cardboard boxes holding what was left of my life, the snow-stained belongings Madison had thrown into the yard, and I saw something flicker across his face. Shame. Real shame. He whispered, "Dad." I lifted a hand. No excuses. No stories. Just the truth. His Adam's apple bobbed. For the first time since all this began, my son was actually trembling. Ethan swallowed hard. "Madison wants the money," he said softly, like a child confessing he'd broken a window. Immediately. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "What for?" His shoulders curled inward. She has debt. Almost 60,000. Credit cards she hid from me." I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. "What kind of debt?" He winced. "Clothes, travel, influencer stuff. She said if she had money, everything would be fixed." I let out a humorless laugh. So she wants $85 million to erase her credit card bills. Ethan didn't answer. He just stared at the floor, the same floor I had swept the night before, because I had nothing else in my life I could control. What else, I asked. His voice cracked. She controls my accounts. I sat back down slowly, heavily. My debit card, my paycheck, my email passwords. She keeps everything. I only get the gas card. He rubbed his face with both hands. She says men can't handle money. I stared at him a long, painful moment. My son wasn't stupid. He wasn't weak-willed by nature. He was controlled. He was worn down. He was living exactly like the abuse victims I'd counseled as a police officer, only this time it was my own blood. I asked quietly, and my contacts, my friends, why did their numbers disappear from my phone? Ethan didn't even try to dodge it. Madison deleted them. She said, "You didn't need anyone except family." Family. In Madison's dictionary, family meant whoever she could manipulate. I forced myself to ask the question I feared most. Ethan, what did she mean when she told you you have to choose? His whole body sagged. He pressed a hand to his forehead. She said, "If I didn't stand with her, I'd lose everything." He swallowed. Custody. Marriage. My daughter. His voice dropped to a whisper. She said she'd take Avery away from me. I clenched my jaw until my teeth hurt. She made you choose between your father and her. His eyes filled. Yes. Silence pressed in around us, thick and heavy. Finally, he said, "Dad, I'm sorry. I know what she's doing is wrong. I just don't know how to stop her." I nodded slowly. Not forgiveness, not condemnation, just acknowledgement. One piece of truth. "You can still fix this," I said. He looked at me, hope and fear stumbling inside the same pair of eyes. "How?" But before I could answer, bang, 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 a fist slammed against the door. Ethan jumped. I stiffened. Then came the voice, sharp, shrill, poisonous. "Gordon, open this door, Madison." "Of course." I cracked open the door. She stood there, hair-wild face blotched red from rage, phone in one hand like a weapon. "You think you can hide my husband here," she screeched. "You think you can break up my family?" I didn't answer. Ethan hovered behind me, looking like a terrified teenager caught sneaking out after curfew. Madison jabbed her finger at my face. "I'll sue you for interfering with marital property. That lottery ticket is family asset. You're holding it illegally." I stared right back into her furious eyes. "Whose name," I asked quietly, "is on that ticket?" She froze. Just 1 second, but enough. "Stop twisting this," she shrieked. "Ethan has rights. I have rights." I opened the door wider, stood tall. My voice dropped low and cold. "You just confessed. Right here." Her breath hitched. Her chest rose and fell like she'd been punched with the truth. I continued. "You want to sue me? Go ahead. But let me remind you, the one who lied, submitted false reports, filed fraudulent guardianship claims, and tried to put me in a nursing home is you." She spun toward Ethan. "Pick a side. Right now." He opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't choose her. He didn't choose me. He chose silence. For Madison, that was worse. She snapped. "I will take everything from you," she screamed. "I will!" I closed the door. Not slammed, not violently, just closed. Her heels hammered down the stairs, each step the frantic stomp of a rabid animal losing control of its territory. Madison's arrogance had cracked. And through that crack, the truth had finally begun to bleed out. Ethan sank onto the bed, head in his hands. "Dad, I don't know what to do anymore." I sat beside him. No hug, no pat on the back, just a steady voice. "You start," I said, "by telling the truth to the one person who can help you. And help your daughter." Ethan looked up. "Who?" I stood and poured another cup of coffee. Grant Carter. At that name, the color drained from Ethan's face. Madison doesn't know he's watching everything, I added. And for the first time in a long while, I saw something in my son's eyes. Not fear, not shame. A spark. Small, but real. A spark Madison could no longer choke out. There are moments you never forget, not because they hurt, but because they mark the day you finally stand tall again. For me, that day was January 10th, 2025. The day I walked into the Georgia Lottery office with my own name, not as the man who'd been thrown out of his home, but as the man about to take everything back. I drove my old dark blue Ford from Savannah to Atlanta before sunrise. The highway was quiet, cold, washed in gray winter air. Mist clung to the windshield like ash. The radio talked about freezing temperatures, but I heard none of it. My mind held one thing. Today the truth goes on the table. Grant Carter was waiting for me by the entrance, gray suit, black tie, the calm, sharp focus of a man used to dealing with state-level authorities. "Mr. Whitfield," he said, extending a hand. "Ready. I've been waiting for this day a long time." We shook firm steady. "Homnay," Grant said, "we settle this. Madison has no authority here. No one does except the lottery's legal board." I nodded, took a deep breath, and we walked inside. The verification office looked more like a surgical ward than a government building. Glass tables, white neon lights, cameras watching every angle. An older official, hair white as frost, waited behind the desk. His nameplate read John Michaels, Director of Jackpot Verification. "Please sit, Mr. Whitfield." I sat. My hands didn't shake. Not because I was fearless, but because I'd been through worse in my 30 years as a cop. John opened a thick folder. "We'll begin the formal verification process." Grant nodded. "We brought every required document." John looked at me. "First, we review the store footage." He pressed a button. A large screen lit up. There I was, walking into the convenience store at 5:37 a.m. on December 24th, 2024. I stood at the lottery machine, chose the same numbers I'd played every Christmas for 20 years. Lydia's birthday, our wedding date, Ethan's birth month, my father's old house number. The camera captured it all. Me paying, me receiving the ticket, me signing it right there at the counter. John nodded. Crystal clear. Grant handed over the next item, the original purchase receipt. John held it under the light, inspected the barcode, the timestamp, the serial number. Matches the store archive exactly. Then Grant slid over another file, thick, heavy. 20 years of purchase records, every Christmas. Same number set. John flipped through the pages, photos of old receipts, notes, signatures. I spoke quietly. Every Christmas I bought the same numbers. My wife called them our family on paper. She died in 2016, and I never stopped. John paused. Just a second. But his eyes softened. Grant continued. And here is the winning ticket. Mr. Whitfield's signature verified against 3 legal documents, his driver's license, his police ID, and his retirement papers. John examined the signature. A perfect match. He set his pen down, looked up. I need to ask one final question for the legal record. Is there anyone in your family who could claim this as marital or joint property? I held his gaze. No. Ethan and Madison were living in my home. I bought the ticket with my money. It's signed by me before anyone touched it. He wrote that down. And you are fully competent, John added, per APS confirmation. I am completely competent, I said, and willing to undergo any evaluation you require. Grant placed another folder on the table. These are the falsified reports sent by Madison Whitfield, all dismissed as untrue by Adult Protective Services. Here is the documentation. John reviewed it, nodded. 5 seconds of silence. 2 seconds of tension. 1 long breath. Then the sentence that shifted the axis of my life. Mr. Gordon Whitfield, the $85 million is yours. 100%. No dispute, no loophole, no family override. I closed my eyes for just a moment. Lydia would have smiled. Grant clapped my shoulder. I told you. Justice can be slow, but it never loses its way. John asked the final procedural question. How would you like to receive the funds lump sum, or through a legal entity? I didn't hesitate. I want a trust. What name? I looked out the glass wall. January wind brushed through the trees outside, the soft rustling sounding exactly like Lydia stepping across our old porch. I said, the Lydia and Gordon Whitfield Trust. Everything goes in there. No one touches a penny except the people I legally appoint. Grant turned to me with real respect in his eyes. This wasn't just a trust. It was a statement. I was no longer the man thrown out of his own home. I was the man rebuilding his life from ashes. The meeting ended. Grant and I walked across the parking lot. I was opening my car door when my phone buzzed. New email. Sender IRS. Internal Revenue Service. Subject request for verification of large transaction. Madison Whitfield. I opened it. Madison had been flagged. Her sudden luxury purchases and deposits didn't match her reported income. Grant scanned the email and let out a low, dry laugh. She thought she was winning. She didn't realize every step she took was leaving a footprint on federal paperwork. I stared at the email. Not triumphant. Not spiteful. Just steady. I'd said it before. Some battles don't need fists. They only need truth. And today, for the first time since Christmas, truth finally stood beside me. Justice had only just begun. The morning I walked into the Chatham County Courthouse, my chest felt like I was carrying a stone. Not because I feared losing, but because no father should ever stand on one side of a courtroom and see his own son standing on the other. Not by choice, but because the woman beside him had dragged all of us here. Madison filed her lawsuit like she was writing a script, full custody of Avery, allegations that I emotionally destabilized the child, accusations that I disrupted the family's financial security. In other words, she was building a legal stage to paint me as a monster so she could justify stealing $85 million. Grant stood beside me, hands in his pockets. Quiet, sharp, a steel blade wrapped in calm. "Don't worry, Gordon," he murmured. "Today we're not defending. Today, we're attacking." The courtroom was cold, old oak benches, white lights humming above. Judge Rebecca Coleman presiding, silver hair, sharp eyes. The kind of woman who had seen every lie under the sun and wasn't impressed by any of them. Madison swept in wearing a white suit, curled hair, red lipstick, the costume of a woman trying to look like a victim. Ethan followed behind her, head down, hands trembling. I looked at my son, and I wanted to scream that the truth was right there beside him. But I stayed silent. In a courthouse, silence weighs more than most words. The hearing began. Madison's lawyer rose. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Madison Whitfield, has serious concerns about Mr. Gordon Whitfield's mental stability." Grant exhaled a quiet, mocking laugh, but he let the man talk. "Mr. Whitfield shows signs of confusion, emotional volatility, and behavior that may endanger his granddaughter." I didn't move. I let them spin their story. Then it was Grant's turn. He stood, placed a thick binder on the table, and the sound echoed through the room. "Your Honor," he said, "these accusations have no foundation in reality. They were intentionally fabricated for one purpose: to seize an $85 million lottery prize." Madison lifted her chin, smirking. Grant continued calmly, "And we will prove that layer by layer. Witness 1, Penelope, my neighbor for 10 years. She stepped up, hand on the Bible, voice steady. "Mrs. Penelope, how long have you known Mr. Whitfield?" Grant asked. "Almost 10 years. Has he ever shown confusion or instability as claimed?" Penelope shook her head. "Never. He reminds me to take my blood pressure pills. He fixes my lights, my door hinges. He's the most clear-minded man on our street." Grant nodded. And have you ever witnessed concerning behavior? From Madison. Penelope gave a bitter little smile. I have security cameras. I saw her take trash from her house and leave it in front of Gordon's before calling the HOA. The courtroom murmured. And she added, I also heard her say on camera, when the old man dies, the house is ours. Chaos. Judge Coleman slammed her gavel. Order. Madison's face drained of color. Grant lifted a USB. We have the video, Your Honor. One layer of lies peeled away. Witness 2. Pastor James from St. Andrews. The pastor stood tall, voice deep and unwavering. Mr. Whitfield has shoveled snow for our church for years. He remembers schedules better than I do. He's kind. He's disciplined. He is not mentally impaired. Madison's lawyer tried. Could he be hiding symptoms from you? The pastor's eyes narrowed. If Gordon had a problem, I'd be the first to know. He doesn't. Another layer peeled away. Witness 3. APS officer. The very woman who investigated the false report. In my home visit on December 27th, she testified, Mr. Whitfield was fully capable. He took his medication correctly. He cooked. He maintained a clean home. There were no signs of cognitive decline. Grant asked, and who submitted the initial complaint? A woman identifying herself as his daughter-in-law, Madison Whitfield. All eyes swung toward Madison. Another layer peeled away. Witness 4. The convenience store clerk. He confirmed everything. Yes, he bought the ticket at 5:37 a.m. Yes, he signed it immediately. Yes, he buys the same numbers every Christmas. For years. Madison's lawyer tried the last weak angle. Could he have been buying on behalf of the family? No, the clerk laughed. He buys alone, every single year. Another layer gone. Finally, the knockout blow. Grant opened his laptop. Your Honor, we request permission to display a live stream recorded by Madison Whitfield on December 29th. Madison bolted up. No. That video is Judge Coleman. Sit down, Mrs. Whitfield. Madison sank back, jaw clenched. The screen lit up. There she was standing in my front yard, throwing my belongings into the snow. Get out. Today, we're done doing charity for some useless old man, her voice sharp as broken glass. The courtroom froze. Judge Coleman leaned forward. This is how you treat your father-in-law. Madison swallowed hard. He disrupted our life. What I see the judge interrupted is verbal and emotional abuse. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Then Grant stood and faced Ethan. Mr. Ethan Whitfield, he said, would you like to speak? Ethan stood, shaking, torn apart inside. He looked at me, then at Madison, and then Ethan broke. He broke completely. He sank into his seat, hands covering his face, sobbing like a man who had held in the truth for far too long. His voice cracked, but every word was clear. My dad is not crazy. He's the only one who ever held our family together. The courtroom fell silent. Madison stared at him, stunned, her control slipping through her fingers. Ethan continued, voice trembling. I'm sorry, Dad. I've been silent for too long, but you didn't do anything wrong, not one thing. I watched my son, and though my heart felt like it was being crushed, I saw something I had waited 7 years to see. Ethan finally saw the truth, finally stood in it, finally spoke it. Layer by layer, every lie Madison had built collapsed right there in that courtroom. Not because I yelled, not because I fought, but because truth always wins when the light finally hits it. People say justice takes time, but I've learned something different. Justice is never late. It arrives at the exact moment the guilty have nowhere left to hide. The day the verdict was read, sunlight poured through the courthouse windows, sharp and cold like polished steel. I stood behind the defendant's table, steady hands folded in front of me. Madison sat, rigid fingernails digging into the wooden bench until her knuckles turned white. Ethan stood a few feet away from her, but the distance between them felt like a canyon carved by truth. Judge Coleman flipped through the thick case file. Her head tilted slightly as if confirming that what she was reading matched exactly what the past weeks had revealed. And then her voice rang through the courtroom, clear, unwavering. After reviewing all evidence, this court rules. The Georgia lottery jackpot belongs 100% to Mr. Gordon Whitfield. All claims from Mrs. Madison Whitfield regarding joint ownership are hereby dismissed in full. Madison shot to her feet. No, that's impossible. That ticket. Judge Coleman struck her gavel. Sit down, Mrs. Whitfield. Madison froze, trembling, unable to absorb the reality swallowing her whole. The judge continued, this time turning to Ethan. As for custody of the minor child, Avery Whitfield, Mr. Ethan Whitfield is granted primary custody. Mrs. Madison Whitfield is limited to supervised visitation for the next 6 months due to demonstrated instability and hostility toward an elderly family member. Madison didn't make a sound. She collapsed into her seat as if someone had removed her spine. And then the final blow: Mrs. Whitfield is officially warned for defamation, malicious accusations, and emotional harm toward an elderly person. Any further misconduct may result in criminal charges. Silence. A silence so sharp it felt like it could slice skin. When the judge exited the room, Madison sprang up again, pale and wild-eyed. No. No. This isn't right, Ethan. Say something. Do something. For the first time, Ethan didn't flinch before answering. Madison. Enough. She stepped back as if slapped. You're abandoning me. You're choosing him over me. Ethan's voice was quiet but stronger than I had ever heard it. No. I'm choosing the truth. Madison's face fell apart. Not from heartbreak, but from realizing the truth no longer belonged to her. When we walked out onto the courthouse steps, half the neighborhood was waiting. Penelope, Pastor James, Mr. Mark, Mrs. Jean, even people I barely knew. Ethan turned to me, eyes red. Voice steady. Dad, I'm sorry. Not whispered, not ashamed, not shifting blame. A real apology, the kind that weighs something. I placed a hand on his shoulder. I didn't say I forgive you. I didn't say it's okay. I said the only words a father should say when a son finally returns to the truth. Do better, for Avery, and for yourself. Ethan nodded, tears falling onto his shirt. Karma did not walk. Karma sprinted. That same afternoon, the live stream Madison used to humiliate me, the one an anonymous viewer had quietly saved, began spreading online. Within 36 hours, it had 3.2 million views. Comments flooded in. She tried to throw an elderly man into the cold. What kind of monster talks like that? Justice for Gordon. The hashtag Justice for Gordon appeared everywhere. By day 3, the marketing agency Madison worked with sent an email. We are terminating our partnership immediately due to conduct in violation of brand ethics. Her main source of income gone. Madison tried posting a crying video claiming I manipulated the court, that the system was unfair, that she was the real victim. No one believed her. People don't sympathize with someone who tries to dump her elderly father-in-law in the snow for money. And then came the letter I knew would arrive eventually, but was still satisfying to read. IRS notice. Request for explanation of suspicious transactions involving Tesla deposit, newly registered LLC, luxury purchases, exceeding reported income. Madison screamed in her living room voice, cracking like an animal cornered. Why is everything happening at the same time? Ethan didn't comfort her, didn't defend her, didn't say a word. He just watched the silence of a man who had finally seen who his wife truly was. As for me, on January 15, 2025, I placed a deposit on a cabin at Tybee Island. Not big, not lavish, just quiet, a place where the ocean breathed soft and steady like the sighs of people who had spent their lives protecting everyone but themselves. I chose that cabin for one reason. Lydia once told me, if I could grow old anywhere, I'd want a home near the water, peaceful, quiet, just the two of us. Now it was just me, but the cabin porch had 2 chairs, one for me, one for her memory. When I signed the contract, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free and finally balanced. Later that week, I returned to the old house to pick up the last few things from the garage. Ethan helped quiet focused. No shame, no excuses. I was packing a toolbox when I heard fast footsteps. "Grandpa, wait for me, Avery." She sprinted toward me, arms wide. "Grandpa." She hugged me so tight my old bones protested a little. I knelt down and hugged her back. She said, breathless with excitement, "Grandpa, we got a new house, me and Daddy. We don't live with Mommy anymore." I squeezed her hand gently. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," she beamed. "Daddy said you can come visit every day." I looked at Ethan standing a few steps behind. Eyes lowered, a faint, honest smile on his face. I nodded. "I'll be there. I promise." Avery hugged me again, longer, warmer. And in that moment, standing in the driveway of a house I had lost, surrounded by pieces of a life I once built, I realized something powerful. There were things I still had. A granddaughter who loved me without condition. A son learning to be a good man again. And a new life, waiting beyond everything that had been taken. Madison sowed greed and reaped loneliness. Ethan sowed silence and received a second chance. And I sowed patience, kindness, and resilience. And now finally I was reaping peace. November 11th, 2025. On Tybee Island, the air carried a cool edge salt from the ocean pine from last night's rain, and something else too. Peace. The kind of peace a man doesn't sleep through. I woke earlier than usual, not out of habit from my years as a cop, but because quiet days have a way of pulling you out of bed as if they don't want to waste themselves. My little cabin glowed in soft, gray morning light. The walls still smelled faintly of fresh wood, and outside on the porch the rose trellis I'd built was pushing out new buds. Deep red roses. Lydia's color. She used to say, "Red roses aren't just flowers. They're a reminder your heart still knows how to stay warm." I tied one of the young branches to the trellis gently, carefully, the way a man ties together pieces of a past that was once broken in his hands. I whispered, "Lydia, I did it. I made it back." Far off the waves kept breaking against the shore, steady, patient, like the ocean was breathing with me. The visit that didn't hurt anymore. Around 9 a.m., Ethan's car rumbled up the dirt road. Avery and little Noah jumped out first, holding seashells like treasures from another world. "Grandpa, Grandpa, look." I kneeled and they wrapped their arms around me as if I'd never left, as if the storm we survived hadn't taken a single thing from us. Avery tipped her face up, blonde hair wild in the wind. Dad said, "He won't let Mom make decisions for him anymore." I looked at Ethan. He stood beside the car, hands in his pockets, but something was different now. His posture, his eyes, the way he breathed. He had come back to himself. "You just came from the single dad support group?" I asked. He nodded. "Every week. I've learned more than I thought I could. And I finally understand why you never gave up on me." I studied him, not to judge, but to make sure what I saw was real. It was. I put a hand on his shoulder. "Just keep walking the right direction. That's all I ask." Ethan lowered his head. His eyes were wet, but he didn't cry. He didn't need to. Avery zoomed past us on the red bike. I gave her the first gift she'd ever received from an adult without Madison's approval. "Mom doesn't like red," she said breathlessly. "But I like red. It's Grandpa's color." I laughed. For the first time in years, my chest felt light enough to float. The knock in the rain. Around noon, as Ethan took the kids inside, the sky darkened again. A storm rolled in, wind cold, the scent of wet earth. Then I heard footsteps on the gravel. Not hurried, not bold, just defeated. Madison stood at the gate, coat soaked through hair tangled by the wind, her expensive heels swallowed by mud. "Mr. Whitfield," her voice cracked. "Please, just a few minutes." I didn't invite her in. I opened the porch door and pointed at the wooden chair under the roof. That was the boundary. And she understood. She sat like someone who'd walked miles on broken glass. "The IRS is investigating me," she whispered. "The marketing company dropped me. I can't find work. I don't know what to do anymore." Then she looked at me, eyes hollow. "I know I was wrong. I know I treated you horribly. But I don't know where to start." Here is something people often misunderstand. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about letting yourself move forward without dragging them behind you. I asked plainly, "You came here for money?" She hesitated, then nodded. Small, weak, honest. I opened the drawer near the door and placed a thin envelope on the table. Madison looked at it as if it might save her life. But when she opened it, there was no check, no cash, no miracle. Just a list: behavioral counseling centers, credit management programs, domestic accountability groups, a therapist specializing in manipulative behavior. She broke. "You won't give me a single dollar." I sat across from her, my voice steady, not cruel, just true, not a single one. Money won't fix what you broke. But if you want to change, these are the places to start. She gripped the chair. "You still hate me." I shook my head. "I don't hate you, Madison, but I won't save someone who refuses to save themselves." A gust of wind rushed through the porch. The roses behind me trembled, but didn't bend. Madison closed her eyes, rainwater and tears blending together. She stood clutching the paper like a lifeline. "Thank you," she whispered, and walked back down the muddy path alone for perhaps the first honest time. The cabin door closed behind me, softly, almost like the house itself was exhaling. The evening that felt like a beginning. The storm cleared by late afternoon. Ethan tossed a ball with Noah in the yard. Avery circled the cabin on her bike, her laughter rising with the sound of the waves. I brewed peppermint tea. The steam mixed with the scent of red roses, the kind of peace I once believed I'd never feel again. I opened my old journal. The final page had always been empty. I wrote 11/11/2025, I have finally come home. Not to the house I was thrown out of, but to the place where my heart can rest. I set the pen down and looked out toward the ocean. Wind whipped against the rose trellis, testing its strength. But it held. Just like me. Just like truth. Just like justice, slow but never lost. And to you, listening to my story. Whether you're in a tiny apartment, in a car, or in a quiet room full of emotions you haven't told anyone about, I want you to hear this. If you've ever been overlooked, if you've ever been pushed out of a family you built with your own hands, if someone tried to rewrite your worth or treat you like you were invisible, justice may come late, but it never goes missing. Let me know where you're watching from. I read every comment. And if my journey reached you even a little, hit like, share, and subscribe so I know you're sitting here with me in this little cabin by the ocean, where after 63 long years I finally found peace. Are you ready for the next story?